All right, my name's Derek Usetta. I'm with Larry Magid and Xander. Xander,
Yep.
you want to hit up an introduction real quick?
Yeah, my name is Xander Pages. I'm a musician, artist, marketing connoisseur, and also a MIP student in the RAMP program. And we're here with
Larry Magid.
the Larry Magid. And can you tell us a little bit about your background, your extensive background in the music industry?
I started in 1962. Uh, I was working for a disc jockey that had what they what they referred to then as tip sheets, which would tell you the different markets that were playing different records and what was hot, and uh, that's when music on the radio was pretty localized, regionalized, as different than it is today. And we started a another newspaper for high school and college kids. I went to Temple University, and I started booking bands for fraternities, and that grew into a, a almost a full time job of booking fraternity parties and colleges and mixers from Virginia to Pittsburgh to um, Massachusetts, and then started doing producing concerts for colleges, and then. Uh, while I was in school, I got an offer to be the head of a college uh, booking department at an agency in New York. Left school and worked there for 3 years. So for 6 years, I was an agent booking acts, and and I had the opportunity to come back to Philadelphia uh, to open up a club which would become iconic called Electric Factory, and from there started booking shows, and um, here I am.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Here he is. Larry, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
I know at that time when you were becoming the individual that you were in the music industry with the Electric Factory, what was kind of your mentality with interacting with people in that space and just, the mindset you had during that time when the music industry is essentially completely different than how it looks like now?
Well, there had not been a club in Philadelphia for kids as there were in other cities, and I thought that that was missing. Um, I met uh, a couple of people that owned a jazz club in Philadelphia, and they wanted to get into the rock business. And they had been producing jazz concerts, and I convinced them to open up a club in Philly, and uh, they asked me to run it and to book it. And at that point, there was an an underground explosion of newer music, new rock music, and it was the music made for and by what was called the counterculture. It was the first time that um, young students, young people had a voice, and uh, I could, being in New York, I could see what was happening around the country where we had signed acts like the Cream and Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention and Butterfield Blues Band and Big Brother and the Holding Company with Janis Joplin. So I saw a little bit about what was happening, and it kept growing and growing. And by the time we opened the club in February of 1968 was the first version of Electric Factory. Uh, there was a there was an explosion in Philadelphia. It was a major force uh, in music in Philadelphia, and we were one of the first what they called underground clubs around the country, and then they grew from there and started booking shows and concerts.
That's
That's
dope.
fantastic.
So basically, since it was, as you said, a counterculture like movement, and it was away from the mainstream of like what was being consumed by most of the people in positions of power, I assume, in the music industry. Did you have any pushback from like the community when you were doing it? A bunch of kids just throwing concerts that is loud and different from
Yeah,
the
right.
music that's out there.
We had a major issue. It was successful from the beginning. At that time, the only way to get onto the Schuylkill Expressway was going north on 22nd Street. And kids would line up to come in, especially for a hot act, and before we would open the door. So a lot of people would see this and uh, club. And outside of the club were we had walls painted in day glow colors that uh, kind of exploded in the night of just bright oranges and greens and blues and reds. It was just and it was a new expression by by art students. So we hired art students. So what happened to us? We had opened, and then about 6 months later, we got a visit by the then police commissioner, who's named Frank Rizzo. Now you wouldn't know who he was. He later became the mayor. We came in to the club one. It was a Friday night, and a couple of the people that were working there said, "Can you come to the front door?" And I said, "What? Why?" And they said, "There's somebody that wants to see you." So I walked up, and then I see the police commissioner. He was bigger than life. He was a giant guy. And I said, "Is this your club?" And I was like speechless. And he said, "I'm going to close this place up. It's going to be a tire warehouse," which is what it was in an earlier life. So of course we were pretty shook up. We had a successful little operation for college students mainly. It was only $3 to get in, and you could see the Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, um, Frank Zappa, Cream, The Who, and we were we did two shows a night, and it was 8 and 10:30. And if we were if it was a big show, we would change the audience. At that time, the city had a curfew, which was 10:30 for anyone under 16 or younger. And a couple of weeks later, the mayor came with the police commissioner, and they looked around. They saw these kids and basically having a good time, but they were different. Long hair, uh, clothing were different. It was black kids, white kids. It was just there to enjoy the music. There was no smoking, there were no drugs there, but they decided to try to close us up. We got an injunction, and we were able to stay open during a lawsuit that the city threw at us. And 10:30, a quarter 11 at night, the second show, we had 2 dozen uniformed police come through, policemen, policewomen, uh, detectives, and they were looking for curfew violators because they couldn't prove anything else. I mean, they tried to see if there were drug dealers in, but we knew who the drug dealers were because they were pointed out to us. We had we had a pretty good idea of who they were, and we kept them out. Wouldn't let them in the club. Anyway, and the police come in and they see the underage kids, high school kids, 16 years old. Uh, they arrested them, would take them out, put them in paddy wagons, and take them to the police station till your parents would come and pick you up. It did. It actually. Uh, um, it actually was a pretty much of a clarion call from the neighbors, the people that went, their parents. There were uh, um, uh, politicians, city councilmen stepped up for us. So we had this lawsuit that went on for a long time, and it was headlines, and the police kept coming in there for a year and a half. We finally won. Of course, it was election day on 1970. I think it was 2nd of November. And because it was election day, when they made this announcement, of course they knew they were going to lose. They buried the our victory, and they had a little article in the back pages. So, ironically, the Philadelphia Bulletin. We're in the Bulletin building, and now, and we were allowed to stay open. And then, by that time, we had started doing concerts at the Spectrum, which was a brand new arena at the time, and we would do what we called dance concerts. It was $5 in advance, $6 at the door, and you saw three big acts. But that's what we went through. A lot of police and city harassment, but ironically, what happened, how we won. We had two constitutional lawyers from Philadelphia that stood up for us, that didn't charge us, and we 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 based our case on First Amendment rights. Now, at that time, there were other cities that had these clubs and were watching and started uh, harassment suits on their own. But Philadelphia was the big trial. Had we not won, I don't think the music business would be exactly like it is today. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. That's for someone else to decide. But it was a struggle. But we were on the side of being right, and that was our case. Free speech, and uh, uh, that's our business became successful. People rallied around us. They trusted us. We weren't charging a lot of money. They got to get to see good shows, and we were very careful about um, taking care of the audience, watching them, and here we are.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit. What's your opinion on programs like this at Drexel University and these music industry programs? What do you think their position is in fostering this new generation of professionals in the music industry?
Well, this is great. I love Drexel. I love the program. I'm aware of that it's one of the two or three top schools in the country. I'm proud that it's in Philadelphia. Um, I've been doing this in schools for a long time, 30 years, uh, and this is where the next generation of people in the various steps of the music business comes from. Uh, you get a good education. There's the teachers are very knowledgeable as opposed to when I started there were no teachers. You just worked, but here you get a lot of value out of your education, and they try to point you into a place where you can uh, actually get in the business or become viable, or you learn how to uh, produce, promote, market. Uh, I dare say that agencies uh, and record companies look for college students that have a an understanding of what they're about to do, and it's a process, but this is to me in today's market is based about newcomers, young people coming out of programs like this, and again, Drexel has a great program and good people running it, and it gives you a step up over people, other people. If you come from Drexel, I, and people knowing that this is a good program, you have a step up over a lot of other programs and young people.
And from a cultural perspective, what do you think about this combination of essentially music and academia in a sense that we really haven't seen before? Because this program is relatively new. What do you think that means for music as a whole?
Well, you better be smart in 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 any business if you want to get ahead. So sure, it's again just
Step
another
forward.
step. It just makes you more viable than someone that doesn't have the background of a good program like this.
Thank you.
What was your entry into the music business? Did you have a musical background yourself, or
No, I try to play a musical instrument, and I just couldn't. I wasn't that proficient at math either, which I think go hand in hand. Uh, I I just like music, and from the earliest days, I was 6 years old. I could sing the pop songs of the day, um, and it just grew. And through junior high school and high school, and I was a rock and roll kid if there ever was one, and a doo wop kid, and it just grew. And it's an interesting thing that happened to me. So there was a time, I guess I was in eighth grade, and I would go into the kitchen while my parents were watching television. And I remember it was like a Saturday night, and I had this little wooden table radio, and I would listen to this um, R&B station from Washington D.C., and they were playing in this is 1956. Your grandparents weren't even born, but in 50, so now they're playing old R&B songs from the earlier 50s, and it may not even have been something that could have been termed rock and roll. A lot of blues songs that just built up, and then you could see where the origins were of rock and roll were Of course, it had some great rock and roll people like Chuck Berry and Little Richard. But the show went off at 11 o'clock. But it had this show had a bigger signal than a lot of the local shows. Had 50,000 watt station that you could pick up on your radio, and the disc jockey was really cool. So afterwards, I'm still sitting at the table, and there was another station that came on from Wheeling, West Virginia, and it was a country music station. And for some reason, I started listening to that station. And from Wheeling, West Virginia, I'll never forget it. And then you could see that some of the songs, the rock and roll songs, were actually country pop songs that were crossing over. And and uh, and there was then I started listening to jazz, and I listened to and absorbed as much music as I could. I wasn't into classical music and didn't didn't like opera at all, but whatever was popular, I just soaked up. It was just I was like a sponge, almost a music savant, and it went just had really just like washed over me. Now, 16 years old, and it was a Saturday night, and some friends and I were driving around looking for a party, looking for where kids were hanging out or some girls. Couldn't couldn't find anything. We were ready to go home, and then one of the guys said, "Hey, I heard you could go into this radio station, WDAS. It's a R&B station, and it wasn't far from where we were." And they said, "Yeah, you can walk in the back door and you know watch the show till they kick you out." So I said, "Let's go." I want it was exciting. I was 16 years old, and I watched the disc jockey. It was a guy, and his name, and everybody was like this. They had a nickname and a little patter, and this guy's name was the Cannonball, and he had this Saturday night program. So we were there for about an hour, and I'm watching the guy with the queuing up the records, and he was working the two turntables, and he was talking at the same time, and he had a hip pattern, and he would say 1, 2, 3, 4. The Cannonball is in the hole. 5, 6, 7, 8. Whatever little rhyme he had. And then he would say, "Are you ready on the right? You ready on the left? You ready, Joe Tomato?" And blast off. And they had this like rocket, sound of a rocket blasting off, and he would go and play his records. So at the time on Saturday night, you would wherever you were, you would end up at Jim's Steaks at 62nd and Noble. We lived in West Philly, so that's where we would get a cheesesteak late at night before we went home. It could be 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. So my friend said, "Okay, time to leave. Let's go. Let's go go to Jim." So the disc jockey said, "Hey, would you bring me and my engineer back a cheesesteak?" So we said, "Sure." And just as we were leaving, I said, "You know what? I want to stick around. I want to watch what this disc jockey does, and bring me back a cheesesteak too." So now I'm in the radio station, and I'm there for an hour. I'm watching the guy, and then he said, "You want to say hello to your friends on the radio?" So I said, "Okay." He says, "Yeah, you want to dedicate a record, this and that," and which was part of the shows. People call in and pick out a record and dedicate it to their friends. So I did this, and when they came back, and we we had our cheesesteak, everybody left. We started to leave, and the disc jockey said, "The greatest thing I'd ever heard in my life." Would you like to come back and be on the air next week with me?" And you bet. So for a few months, that's what I did on Saturday nights. I didn't have a car. I had to take a bus and then go on around midnight and I'd go home and it'd take 2 or 3 buses to get home. I'd get home like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it was a little scary, but I did that, and that hooked me. And then uh, just one thing led to another later on, and um, I just because of my deep affection for music, especially R&B music at that time, it just was overwhelming, and I was fortunate, but then I was just lucky. But I I found out trying to put yourself in the way of getting lucky, and having enough uh, confidence in myself that I could see I could if I could learn more, I could succeed. And it just worked out for me when I was in college, starting to book fraternity bands, and then everything just grew from there. But it was just because I love music so much, and I actually thought of myself as a sponge because I took everything. I could tell you what label the act was on, what color the label was. I could tell you everything about it because it just wanted I just absorbed everything, and that's um, I got to the point when I went to college, decided to pursue this as a uh, um, and not pursue what my parents wanted me to be, and it worked out for me. I was very fortunate.
What do you want? What do you want your legacy to be, Larry?
I don't care about my legacy. There'll be people that are just as good and better than me in the future. Um, I'm happy being here.
Amen.
Happy to give everybody the opportunity of what I've learned over the years, and um, and be able to tell you basically, you want to be in this business, you're going to work your ass off. It's just, it's not going to be easy. You're going to make you're going to make sacrifices. So my legacy is being here, hoping that um, people like you find a comfortable place to land in, that it gives you the opportunity to be creative. Uh, that at some point, nobody's going to know or care who I was, and I'm fine with that. I'm good. It's just now it's everybody's opportunity. I still work. I still do things that I like in the business, and I have a nonprofit that I work with, the Philadelphia Music Alliance, that gives scholarships and um, uh, helps uh, um, students uh, with educational seminars and programs that we have, and uh, but at some point, it's somebody else's time, and if you just hold on, and it's it kind of ruins what your legacy is. For me, I knew that there was a time when I didn't care for a lot of the new music, and it was just time for me to get off the bus. But I like working with Bruce Springsteen. So I
Okay.
still do his shows.
Shout out Jersey.
Yeah, and he, to me, as a quick aside, he's the embodiment of what rock and roll is, what rock music was.
You heard it here
He's
first.
the total
Bruce
package,
Springsteen.
total package. But so there's a few things that I do, but I knew there was time, and I had made enough money. But I didn't get into this business because I was going to be really wealthy. I just got into business because I love music,
Mm.
and I just thought that things would take care of itself. So for 9 years, I didn't make a lot of money. In fact, there were there were 4 times from where I started that I took less money to learn more. Even when I went to New York, I was making more money in Philadelphia booking college bands, but to go to New York was worth the sacrifice. And then when I came back, I wasn't making any money. So for 9 years, I didn't make anything. It just survived. And then I met this girl, and I said, wait a second. Now I better get serious because now I have an obligation, and so got married, uh, lived in a real small house that was falling apart, and luckily the year after we got married, I started doing well. Um, so my legacy is really what maybe you think it is, so not what I think it is. But I'm happy. I'm in a good place where I think I accomplished what I wanted to, and expose people to a lot of music that they might not have been exposed to. Um, but it's uh, everybody gets a shot.
And if you had one thing to say to my generation, individuals like Xander and myself, what would you say to them?
Just keep doing what makes you happy.
Mm.
Keep doing what makes you happy.
Follow your dreams.
Yeah,
Follow
that's
them.
it. Yeah,
The ball
if
keeps on
if
rolling.
you're here to follow your dreams, that's it. But I read one time uh, when I was a kid, and I read a lot, um, and I read. I would spend a lot of time at the library, even though I played ball and everything. I would go to the library, and I would read about people that came before me, entertainers, business people, whatever, just people that had become a success. And I wanted to know what made them a success. And I found that there was a common thread through everything, and it was always hard work. It was never easy where somebody just said, "Hey, I'm here. I'm a movie star. Here I'm making records. I'm doing this. I'm doing that." It was it and it had a great effect on me because that's what my parents were telling me. And the thing that I remembered was that if you trying to think of the exact quote, if you wanted your dreams to come true, you had to have the courage to pursue them. And that really sums it up. That's it.